Hey everyone. Today I'm very excited to announce that we have our first ever guest writer for Offscreen. The script for today's video was written by Loftus, best known for his 343 Industries collaboration on many Halo reference books, including the 2022 Halo Encyclopedia, the visual guides, Mythos, and Warfleet. In this new series, I've invited this master of Halo lore to step in and talk about a few things in my videos that weren't quite up to par with established canon, and in the process highlight interesting details about the Halo universe for you all to enjoy. So today, Steven wants to talk about something I mentioned during my History of War video, which is the location of the outer colony world of Harvest. Halo is unique in science fiction in that most of its events take place relatively close to Earth, with many locations based on real stars with known exoplanets. Epsilon Indi is located in the constellation Indus, the Indian, first being documented by Johann Bayer in 1603. Looking at the constellation from Earth, Epsilon Indi is one of the stars forming the arrows being held in the left hand of the Indian. In 1995, the SETI Institute added Epsilon Indi to its catalog of nearby habitable systems. This was a list of stars with orbiting planets that could potentially support life, under a program designed to look for signals from extraterrestrial civilizations. Even though no signals were found, even after looking at about 800 stars, Epsilon Indi's inclusion in this list had made it rife for potential in the science fiction realm, perhaps most notably in Halo. In fact, Halo shares this distinction with Bethesda's Starfield, featuring many of the same stars and taking place in roughly the same region. This helped us greatly when building our top-down map of human space, as well as our animations of the Carver findings. But in that map, you can see that the colony of Harvest is depicted as being at the very edge of human space. This lines up with early intentions of Bungie story lead Joseph Staten in his novel Contact Harvest. But in our actual galaxy, the star that Harvest orbits is almost the same distance from Earth as Reach, Earth's closest colony world. The discrepancy initially lies in the old Xbox website, where much of Halo's timeline was originally published. It stated that by the time of the first game, set in the year 2552, there were only 21 inner colonies. This was later changed so that the inner colonies numbered much higher, at 210. This seems at odds with Staten's mention in the book of Harvest being only the 17th human colony founded. If the inner colonies were still building to a count of 210, then Harvest's late colonization date makes little sense. But it certainly fits if the inner colonies were only 21 in number. The way 343 Industries chose to deal with the notion that some outer colonies were, distance-wise, not always far from Earth compared to inner colonies, is with the idea that outer colonies were further away through the dimension of slip space, rather than where they are relative to one another in traditional space. They also had to inherit the now canon 210 inner colonies and 800 plus outer colonies from original game developer Bungie. So, while Reach and Harvest were close to the same distance from Earth, it was a much shorter slipspace trip from Earth to Reach than it was from Earth to Harvest. When Steven was working on Warfleet with 343 Industries, a discussion arose regarding the nature of slipspace. He wrote up a premise that would help them to justify some of the distances to known inner and outer colonies, jokingly calling it the nature of slipspace, or how to justify moving at the speed of story. The short version of that discussion was the proposal that the ball of yarn analogy that Dr. Halsey references in First Strike indicates the path ships can easily move through in slipspace. His idea was that slipstream space included regions of varying sizes based partially on the existence of matter and energy in real space, and that ships could only pass between these regions, and not through them. Like a cauldron of bubbles all pushed together, and ships can only navigate the surfaces between bubbles, without passing into one. A diagram he made in 2017, while not strictly what 343 Industries had in mind, at least gives a visual way of seeing how slipspace paths can affect trips, even when 2 points in real space are not far from one another. This allows Harvest to be an outer colony, and more difficult to get to than the inner colony of Reach, despite Earth's perspective that both stars are almost equally as distant. My decision to stick with the original, more distant location for Harvest in this series was in keeping with Staten's intention of having Harvest exist physically at the edge of human space. protruding into unknown and unexplored regions of the galaxy. Thanks so much for taking a moment to dive deeper into the specifics of the Halo universe with me and our resident master of Halo lore, Stephen Loftus. We're very happy he's decided to join us as a guest writer for Offscreen. If you like what you heard, and if you learned something interesting, be sure to leave a comment and let us know. We'll eventually have more episodes of Fact Check with Stephen Loftus on the way. See you then.